Your achievements, for which I salute your visionary leadership, have inspired us, the Palestinians, all freedom fighters and advocates for human dignity worldwide. I wish you all the success for this blessed Ard and your future endeavors, the core of which I am sure are the prosperity and happiness for all who live in this beautiful island. Comrades, in 1947, when the British government sought to terminate its mandate in Palestine, the international community through the United Nations recommended a solution to the conflict between the Jews, most of them then immigrants, and the indigenous Palestinian Arabs. That solution contained in General Assembly Resolution 181 called for the creation of two states. Today, it is only the State of Israel that exists and is a full member of the United Nations. The Palestinians, who have suffered decades of displacement, dispossessions, and systematic denial of their national and human rights, have yet to be welcomed into the community of nations. In 1988, the PLO, our sole legitimate representative, declared the establishment of the State of Palestine over the territory occupied by Israel in 1967, which is the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. By limiting our national aspirations to 22% of our historic homeland, the PLO made an historic compromise in the interest of peace. Palestinians' concessions over land have been painful, but they have been honored. The right of the Palestinian people to self-determination has been universally recognized by the Family of Nations in its many United Nations resolutions. The last was in December last year. 182 out of total 193 member states of the United Nations voted in favor of the right of the Palestinians to self-determination. On the other hand, none of the member states of the United Nations, including the US, recognizes Israel's sovereignty over any part of the occupied territories, including East Jerusalem. We, the Palestinians, have unequivocally confirmed our commitment to peace and negotiations as a means to achieving the two-state solution. And in order to honor this commitment to peace, we have been negotiating over the past 20 years to bring to an end the Israeli military occupation of our territories, but to no avail, because Israel has never respected any of the relevant United Nations resolutions or any of its agreements with us. Of these agreements were the Oslo Agreement stated that Palestinian state would be established in May 1999, 1994 Paris Protocol, 1998 Weyerhaeuser Memorandum, 1999 Sharm el-Sheikh Understandings, 2007-2008 the Annapolis Agreement, then New York talks, and again Sharm el-Sheikh, then the West Jerusalem talks in 2010, and last was the Amman-Jordan talks early this year mediated by the Jordanians. All these agreements and understandings have been deliberately frustrated by Israel. Had these agreements, or any of them, and more than 30 relevant United Nations resolutions been respected by Israel, thousands of innocent lives would have been saved, and peace would have prevailed in the Middle East these past decades. This deliberate disrespect by Israel was reflected in the openly stated plan of a former Israeli Prime Minister, Shamir, in 1992, who then stated that he would negotiate with the Palestinians for 10 years without giving them anything. This strange principle of negotiations was in fact adopted by all of Shamir's successors of the Israeli leaders, because negotiations for the Israeli political leaders is a time-gaining process to change the geography and demography in their favor by building more settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories and transfer of their illegal Jewish settlers. So far, 132 settlements and more than 500,000 illegal settlers live in these settlements. The Quartet Roadmap, for example, which was endorsed by the Security Council in its Resolution 1515 in the year 2003, specifically calls on Israel to freeze all of its settlement activities, including the so-called natural growth, and to dismantle all settlement outposts erected since March 2001. Now they are more than 100. The International Court of Justice, in its 2004 advisory opinion, recognized that Israel's action inside the occupied Palestinian territories that prejudice Palestinian rights to a homeland there, and I quote, severely impedes the exercise by the Palestinian people of its right to self-determination and is therefore a breach of Israel's obligations to respect that right. In spite of ignoring all these repeated calls for a freeze of its settlement activities, and in spite of all frustrations by the Israelis and their disrespect of the international law, which undermine the credibility of negotiations and seriously threaten the viability of the two-state solution, ironically enough, Israel continued to receive unconditional support from Western countries and in particular USA, as if Israel is an above international law country. Even the Europeans, who could exert considerable pressure on Israel as main trade partners, cannot go beyond verbal criticism because of domestic politics and US pressure. Finally, I would like to conclude by saying that recognition of the State of Palestine by individual countries or by the United Nations at large, however, is not a substitute for negotiations, is pivotal to the peace process, as it affirms respect of United Nations resolutions, in particular 242 of 1967, which called on Israel to pull out from territories it has conquered by force in the same year. This resolution asserts on the inadmissibility of acquisition of territory by force. It also reaffirms the international community's commitment to the two-state solution. As a Palestinian familiar with modern Irish history, particularly the struggle for freedom from colonial British rule, the Declaration of Independence, and the convening of Dáil Éireann, and the establishment of the Irish Republic, I believe that our friends in Ireland are especially sensitive to the predicament in which we Palestinians find ourselves. I, accordingly, would like to call through you on the official Ireland, including your leadership, to do all in its capacity as the chair of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, to do everything possible and hopefully to take the lead in Europe to unequivocally demand from Israel, the occupying power, to respect the international law and to stop its inhumane practices against the Palestinians under its occupation. It is the right time for Ireland and the rest of Europe to recognize the State of Palestine on the 1967 borders, side by side with the State of Israel, as a constructive first step to end a 45 years of Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories. Thank you very much.